Hey, welcome back to Charlie Brown Politics. I'm Charlie Brown, the host of the show. Today, I'm wanting to talk more about the Israeli and Palestine conflict. Now, if you don't know, here at Charlie Brown Politics, we stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. Now, the news is trying to lead you to believe and throw out this propaganda that Palestine unprovokingly attacked Israel over the weekend. Now, like I said before, at Charlie Brown Politics, we refute this narrative. We do not agree with it. Situations are situational. We have to step back and ask ourselves what events previously led up to the events that we're seeing befold in front of our eyes. Now, I've said this before. Do not take my word for it. Go watch Kim Iverson's take on it. Go read Max Blumenthal's book, Goliath. And take in this knowledge for yourself and see it for yourself. Now, let's digress. Max Blumenthal, one of the leading voices in this conflict, he's written multiple books on it, has gone down to Gaza, to Israel himself, and has spent time there to actually see what's going on. He is he grew up Jewish, and so he has, I guess you could say, some type of platform to stand upon when speaking about these issues. Now, so recently, Max Blumenthal went on Tim Pool's podcast and dropped an Israeli-sized truth bomb on Tim Pool and the rest of the crew that was there. And it was a beautiful sight to behold. We're going to get into that and more. But first, I want to show you a video because there's news going around about Palestinians killing 40 Israeli babies. Now, this, if is true, it would obviously be terrible, and everybody, would not feel good about this, to say. But if we can just take a breath and, think about history for a second, these dead babies are, should be bringing up a recent story. Well, not relatively recently, but subjectively recently, the first Gulf War, what happened? We had a young lady get up before the UN and testify that she saw Iraqi soldiers take babies out of incubators to leave them die on the floor so they could take these incubators back to their homes. Now, this was used as propaganda to incite the American people into wanting to go to war, right? So let's rewatch this video and take a trip back in memory lane.
I stayed behind and wanted to do something for my country. It's the second week after an invasion. I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying. I could not help but think of my nephew.
Okay. So if that's your first time seeing it, surprise. Or if it's not, let's remember that this story that we just watched, this video, was not true. She was actually trained by CIA actors or something like that. It turns out that the whole story was just, not true. It was used to incite emotion, used as propaganda back in the day. So when we hear these stories about babies getting killed, it's not necessarily to say that every story we hear is not true, but we need to come in with a skeptical mind, right? All right, so like I said, Max Blumenthal went on Tim Pool's podcast and dropped a crap ton of truth all over the place. It was beautiful to watch. And so I got a few clips pulled up, and let's just start watching these clips. I'm going to let them run for a while because it's going to take a minute, and just for time's sake, I'm trying to keep it rolling here.
Highest probability in terms of this being truthful is that,
And they're talking about the story that just came out about the Palestinians killing Israeli babies. So that's where we're at.
A couple babies died. One had its, man, this is such a horrible thing to say, but severely injured to the point of decapitation. And then someone passes it along, and Purple Monkey dishwashes itself, telephones itself into 40 babies killed, beheaded, and a more extreme version of the story. But now it serves a political purpose, so it escalates to a point where Fox News is reporting it, headline, as though it's proven. The challenging thing is, what do you need? How do you prove it? What do you do if this is true, if they're not lying?
Well, there's another purpose to it, which is to deflect from the obviously true, real videos of babies being killed by Israeli airstrikes all across the Gaza Strip. When I was in Gaza in 2014, I went to Khan Yunis, which is in the southeast, had been completely destroyed at its eastern edge by the Israeli military. And the casualties were so intense that the hospital started filling up in Khan Yunis. And I went to a small hospital and talked to the head of the hospital, and he showed me photos. And these photos are on my Twitter page from the time, all real. He had to bring in from local shops ice cream coolers to store dead babies in because the mortuaries had run out of space. And now we see Israel attacking the hospital in Beit Hanun in the north is completely out of commission. All of these hospitals are coming under attack. So babies are dying in the Gaza Strip. There's video right now. Jackson Hinkle just tweeted a video of a father carrying his baby out of the rubble. There's another video on Times of Gaza, a local publication, of a father putting his infant daughter to sleep for the last time. And they've completely erased these casualties. They've always been erased. And that's part of what fuels the violence and the ruthlessness that we see from these fighters, is that they want to avenge what they call their martyrs. And that fuels what is referred to as the cycle of violence. This is the invisibilization of them.
So you think that some Hamas fighters, they target civilians because civilians in Gaza are targeted?
Well, first of all, let's point out another thing that's being left out of the conversation. CNN never showed this. Fox never showed this. They targeted military bases, primarily military bases like Nahal Oz, that are maintaining the siege of Gaza, and they overwhelmed those bases and humiliated the fourth most powerful military on the planet with a blue water navy with nuclear weapons. Some of these fighters were filmed entering the bases with no shoes on. They're using homemade weapons, AK-47s, paragliders, fishing boats to get in. This is not a powerful army, and they humiliated them and Israelis' vaunted intelligence services. So they don't want to talk about that. And yes, they went in. A lot of these kibbutzim are right next to the bases. I've been to them.
Yeah, but they did, this is a terrorist attack. They went to a music festival and started killing people. So I get what you're saying. Like, they are definitely the underdogs and stuff. But to classify it, try and point out that it's, or to make it, to legitimize it as an actual military operation, I think totally glosses over the fact that they attacked civilians intentionally. They did.
It was a military operation, and Israel is now attacking civilians intentionally.
They're not targeting.
Israel has a doctrine of targeting civilians intentionally. It's called the Dahiyya doctrine, and I can lay out what it is. But they believe that if they attack civilians and humiliate them, they will eventually rise up against their government. They tested it against Hezbollah in Lebanon, and it failed. It's being used against the civilians in the Gaza Strip. They want to lower their morale so much that they actually turn on
you're
Hamas.
Still talking about you're talking about a retaliation, right? Because like I said, again, this initially started.
All right. I'm gonna pause it real quick for a second. So this guy that Max is talking to tries to bring up the fact that, or this argument that I hear a lot, they're not specifically targeting civilians. And Max just shuts him down, and he's like, look up this Dahiyya project, and goes through it. And I have the receipts for this Dahiyya project right here, guys. I got an article pulled up from iNews. All right, and let's get into it. The Hannibal Code and Dahiyya Doctrine, Israel's controversial directives, which could already be used in Gaza. The doctrines are understood to allow for disproportionate force that may be in violation of international law. Israel could already be using shadowy military practices in its aerial campaign in Gaza. That may constitute war crimes, according to security analysts. use of Hannibal and Dahiya doctrines by the Israeli army have not been confirmed, but they are deadly and controversial in military practices. The first, the Dahiya doctrine, is a term that emerged in the aftermath of the 2006 Israel-Lebanon war and refers to a suburb of Beirut and stronghold of militant faction Hezbollah that was largely destroyed by Israeli jets. Israel Defense Force, IDF, Chief Gadi Eisenkot later explained the concept of the Dahiya project. We will wield disproportionate power against every village. Every village, okay? Look how they're describing them as villages, not as cities or as towns. I'm going to continue. We will wield disproportionate power against every village which shots are fired on Israel and cause immense damage and destruction. From our perspective, these are military bases, he said. This is a plan that has already been authorized. So right here, the chief of the IDF said that they're looking at these villages as a military base. And let's continue. Colonel Gabriel Sabani explained on the term in a report for Israeli think tank, the Institute for National Security Studies. Attacks should aim at Hezbollah military capabilities and should target economic interest in the centers of civilian power that support the organization, he wrote. There you go. They're targeting centers of civilian power that support the organization. Let's continue. Israeli security specialists see indications that the policy is being employed in the ongoing aerial bombardment in Gaza. IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari said on Monday morning, the emphasis is on damage, not on accuracy, following reports of heavy civilian casualties in the Strip. Asked if Israel is now using the doctrine in Gaza, Yanni Ben Mentionem, sorry, I butchered that, a security analyst with close ties to the Israeli military said, definitely, but he adds that this was psychological warfare to scare civilians away from Hamas targets. Dr. Daniel Bynum, a scholar of the conflict at the Center for International Strategic Studies and advisor to the U.S. State Department, said the general concept that Israel will inflict considerable damage and destruction in order to restore deterrence does apply. Israel security specialists see indications that the policy is being employed in the ongoing aerial bombardments in oh shoot, I think I messed up on my thing, but you guys get what I'm trying to say here. So Max brings in and destroys this guy's argument that well, it's not in Israel's specific policy that they're not targeting civilians. Boom, Max destroyed that, shut it down instantly. So there's another clip that I want to bring up, and Max is just going to be talking about, you know, the violence that came upon this and the situations that would lead up to this cause. So let's just go ahead and flip right into it, shall we?
We'll say that because the logic is so discriminatory towards Palestinians. No one will consider their position. And then the other point I wanted to make is just about the use of violence in this conflict by Palestinians who have tried everything. I mean, I don't know if you know about what the Great March of Return was, but it was sanctioned by Hamas, but it was a grassroots initiative in Gaza to just march without weapons like guns to the wall that surrounds them. And they were shot one by one in the legs. Many of them were killed. Journalists were killed covering it. It was a complete bloodbath. And that's when the society said, you know what, we can't win with this tactic of, you know, walking to the fence and just asking them to let us in. They don't want.
And so what Max just explained right there were previous attempts by the Palestinian people to protest and to try to get the changes that they so desperately need through nonviolent terms. And so he's talking about this, I forgot what he called it, the last walk or something walk. But it's basically a nonviolent protest to try to get the change that they want and need. And so, yeah, that was just a recap of what Max was saying.
Want us. That's so everyone and you know, everyone ignored that. And now they're paying attention to the violence.
Yeah.
In Gaza used to have 9,000 settlers in it. 9,000 settlers who took like 30 to 40% of the water in a place of 1.5 million people. Why did those settlers leave? It was because of the Second Intifada. It was because of the violence that was applied, and much more gruesome violence in many ways than we're seeing now, because this was the time of suicide bombings. People willing to die because they were so desperate, blowing themselves up in order to kill because they had no weapons at that point. Now, the factions in Gaza actually have reverse engineered Israel's military, and they have weapons, so they don't need to do suicide bombing. So Gaza did that.
They got enforced too.
Hamas did that. Then what is the West Bank right now? It's controlled by the Palestinian Authority, which is funded partly through the EU and State Department. They don't resist Israel. In fact, they arrest Palestinians on behalf of Israel. And what do Palestinians have there? In many ways, they have the same prison-style situation as they have in Gaza, but with settlers all around them. So what does that tell Palestinians? It tells them the only way to get this off our back is through violence.
Are there Palestinians who live in?
All right. So that's all I'm going to show for that clip. And Max is just going over, that this isn't just one day they decided to get up and punch somebody in the face, okay? Tactics have been tried, have been employed throughout decades and decades of nonviolent attempts to get Palestine free from this occupation, right? So God bless Max Blumenthal, and God bless Tim Pool for actually having Max on and be willing to talk to him about this, and and the whole interview was pretty fantastic. It's 2 hours long. Go check it out. Max completely just fucking, I hate to say it like this, but he drops some fucking truth bombs, Israeli size for sure. And I just love seeing Max get out there and fight for what we all know is the right side. And so let's wrap it up there, guys. What are your thoughts on this issue? What are your thoughts on Max, on Tim, on the interview, if you've caught the whole thing? Or if you're wanting to talk about something else, just leave it down below, So with that, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you guys on that next episode of Charlie Brown Politics. Later.